Welcome to the deep dive. We're plunging into, well, the deep end of human history today. For a long time, the story seemed pretty simple, didn't it? Humans leave Africa maybe 60,000 years ago, one big event, and boom, the world gets populated.
Yeah, that's the classic out of Africa story.
Yeah.
Clean, linear, almost too neat.
Exactly. But what if that's just like the final scene? What if the real story is much older, much more fragmented, with lots of earlier chapters that got lost?
That's precisely what the evidence is showing now. Our species, Homo sapiens, didn't just burst out once. There were these earlier waves, these pioneers heading out long, long before that 60,000-year mark.
Forgotten migrations.
Yeah, often leaving almost no trace.
Yeah.
Sometimes they vanish completely. It's a much stronger, richer history than the simple version.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to try and unpack all of that. We'll look at the fossils, the tools they left behind, genetics, even ancient climate data, basically everything we know about these really early Homo sapiens explorers.
We want to figure out, when and where were they? What were their lives like? How did they stack up against other ancient humans, like Neanderthals, who were already out there? And the big question, what happened to them?
Right. And for you listening, think of this as a shortcut to getting your head around this updated, more complex picture. We're aiming for those aha moments without getting bogged down. It's about seeing the earlier drafts of human history.
It's fascinating stuff. Makes you rethink our whole journey.
Definitely. Okay, so let's set the stage. Deep time. Before Homo sapiens even existed, the old world, basically Africa, Europe, Asia, wasn't empty. It was already home to our distant cousins, other hominins.
That's crucial. For millions of years, various human relatives were walking around, making tools, exploring. We weren't the first ones out there by a long shot.
And the earliest sign of anyone leaving Africa is just mind-blowing, isn't it?
Shangshan, China.
Oh, yeah. Shangshan. We're talking stone tools dated to 2.12 million years ago. That's incredibly old.
But just the tools, right? No bones. Exactly. No hominin fossils were found with those tools at Shenzhen. So we don't know who made them. Could have been an early Homo, maybe something else entirely. But it tells us someone with tool-making skills was in East Asia over 2 million years ago. That predates the oldest known Homo fossils outside Africa by like 250,000 years. It's a real mystery. A ghost lineage.
Wow. Just tools hinting at this incredibly ancient presence. Okay, then things get a bit clearer with Homo erectus. They really seem to be the first major players on the world stage.
Absolutely. Around 1.8 million years ago, we find Homo erectus fossils or something very close outside Africa. The site at Dmanisi in Georgia is key here.
Right, Dmanisi. What was special about them?
Well, for one, they're the oldest definite human fossils outside Africa. And interestingly, they had pretty small brains, maybe 600 cc, about half ours. And their tools were quite simple, sort of Oldowan-style basic choppers and flakes.
But they still managed to get all the way to Georgia.
They did, and they didn't stop there. Homo erectus became a true globetrotter. They spread across Asia Java by 1.6 million years ago.
Java man.
That's the one. And into Europe, too. We see evidence in Spain around 1.2 million years ago, fossils sometimes called Homo antecessor.
And they brought new tech with them, right? The hand axe.
Yes, the Acheulean hand axe, that teardrop-shaped tool. So it's a big leap. It requires more planning, more skill to make than the earlier tools. It's symmetrical, worked on both sides. It shows a different kind of thinking.
A multi-tool for the Paleolithic?
Sort of, yeah. Butchering, digging, woodworking, and crucially, Homo erectus probably mastered fire. That's a game changer for moving into colder climates, for protection, for cooking.
Okay, so they're adaptable, smart tool makers, using fire, traveling huge distances. But what about creativity? Art? We usually think that's a Homo sapiens thing.
Well, hold on. There's this amazing find from Java, about 500,000 years old. It's a freshwater shell with a zigzag pattern deliberately engraved on it.
Engraved by Homo erectus.
Seems like it. It's intentional, it's abstract. It's considered the oldest known abstract engraving by any pre-sapiens human.
Wow. So the roots of symbolic thought might go back way further than we thought.
Exactly. It challenges that idea that sapiens suddenly invented symbolic behavior. Maybe it was a more gradual thing, emerging in different lineages.
Like that braided stream idea again, not a straight line. Okay, so erectus is out there, and then later another wave heads out of Africa.
Right. Sometime between, say, 700,000 and 300,000 years ago, we see another pulse. These are often grouped under Homo heidelbergensis, or just archaic humans.
And these are important because they lead to.
They're likely the ancestors of both Neanderthals in Europe and Denisovans in Asia. So by around 400,000 years ago, you have established populations of Neanderthals spreading across Europe and Denisovans across Asia.
And these guys had big brains, like us.
Yep, large brains comparable to ours. And they were using more sophisticated tools too, Middle Paleolithic technology, things like prepared cores to knock off flakes, setting the stage for when Homo sapiens finally arrives on the scene.
Okay, so let's bring in Homo sapiens. Our species emerges in Africa. When exactly are we talking about now?
The picture keeps getting older. Fossils from Jebel Irhoud in Morocco push the origin of our species back to around 300,000 years ago. That was a huge discovery.
300,000 years. Wow. And we see other early sapiens fossils in Africa, too.
Definitely. Omo 1 in Ethiopia is about 195,000 years old. Here too, also Ethiopia, about 160,000. They show those key modern features developing the rounder skull, the high forehead, the chin, though maybe still a bit more robust than us today.
So our species is evolving in Africa for a long time, and then they start to venture out, much earlier than that 60,000-year mark.
Much earlier. And the first really stunning evidence of this comes from Europe, believe it or not. Apidima Cave, Greece.
Apidima 1, this one really shook things up, didn't it?
Completely. It's a partial skull, but its features, especially the rounded back, scream Homo sapiens and the date. 210,000 years ago.
210,000 in Greece. That's the oldest Homo sapiens outside Africa by a huge margin.
By far. It tells us our species reached southeastern Europe way, way earlier than we ever imagined.
But the story in that cave gets even weirder, right? There was another skull.
Yeah, this is wild. In the same cave, they found Apidima too. But it's a Neanderthal skull. And it's younger, dated to around 170,000 years ago.
So Homo sapiens skull 40,000 years older than a Neanderthal skull in the same place. How does that work?
It suggests a really dynamic situation. The interpretation is that this Apidima 1 group was an early pulse of Homo sapiens into Europe. But they didn't last.
A dead end.
Likely a dead-end population. They got there, maybe survived for a while, but ultimately vanished, leaving no descendants today. Maybe climate change got them, maybe disease, maybe competition with Neanderthals who were better adapted to Europe at the time. They were later replaced by Neanderthals in that very area.
So pioneers, but they didn't make it long term. Did they leave any tools or artifacts with Apidima 1?
Unfortunately, no. The skull was found sort of isolated, and the cave sediments were mixed up over time, so no direct link to tools. But there are Middle Paleolithic tools in Greece from around that 200,000-year mark. We always assumed they were Neanderthal tools. Now, we have to wonder, could some of them have been made by these early sapiens? It opens up possibilities.
It really paints a picture of early exploration, maybe even interaction far earlier than we thought. Okay, let's shift focus to the Levant, the Middle East. That's always been a key crossroads.
Absolutely critical, a bridge between continents. And we see Homo sapiens popping up there very early too. Miss Lee Cave in Israel.
Miss Lee, what did they find there?
A jawbone. Clearly anatomically modern Homo sapiens. And the date is between 177,000 and 194,000 years ago. Again, way older than the standard out-of-Africa time.
And this wasn't just a bone fragment, right? They found more.
Oh, yeah. Miss Lee gives a much better picture. They found sophisticated stone tools right alongside the jawbone blades made using the Levallois technique.
Levallois. That's the fancy one where they prepare the core stone first.
Exactly. It requires planning, a mental template. Very efficient way to make sharp flakes. It's a technology we see in Africa's Middle Stone Age. And interestingly, Neanderthals use similar methods too. It suggests these Miss Lee folks brought their African tool traditions with them.
So advanced tools. What else? Did they hunt, use fire?
Yes, both. Lots of animal bones, gazelles, aurochs showing they were successful hunters or scavengers, and clear evidence of controlled fire, hearths. The site was actually sealed by a rockfall not long after they were there, preserving it like a time capsule, a snapshot of life nearly 200,000 years ago.
Incredible, just sitting there, preserved.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Levant stays important. We see more Homo sapiens there later on too, right? School and Kafsa caves.
That's right. Fast forward a bit to the last interglacial period, roughly 130,000 to 90,000 years ago. School and Kafsa, also in Israel, have yielded remains of dozens of individuals. School is maybe 80, 120,000 years old. Kafsa are around 95,000. Again, anatomically modern humans.
And these sites, they offer something really special, don't they? Evidence of symbolic behavior.
This is where it gets really profound. At both sites, but especially Kafsa, we see clear evidence of intentional burials.
Intentional burials, like with ceremony.
It certainly looks that way. Kafsa 11 is a young adolescent buried with deer antlers placed on their chest and hands. School 5 is an adult male buried with a wild boar jaw on his chest. These aren't just bodies dumped in a pit. This implies ritual, maybe belief systems, ideas about death. It's some of the earliest strong evidence for this anywhere.
That's deeply human, thinking about meaning, about what comes after. And there was more than just burials.
Yes. At Kafsa, they found marine shells, Lysimera shells, that came from the Mediterranean coast about 35 kilometers away.
So they traveled to get them? Or traded?
Hard to say, but they definitely acquired them. And these shells show wear patterns suggesting they were strung together, like beads on a necklace or bracelet. Some even had traces of red ochre pigment on them.
Ochre, like paint.
Yeah, red pigment. They found chunks of ochre in the caves, too.
Yeah.
And even a limestone flake with a deliberate crosshatch pattern scratched into it. So you've got burials, grave goods, personal ornaments, pigment use, maybe early art, all around 100,000 years ago.
It suggests a pretty complex society, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Notions of value, maybe status, certainly symbolism.
It really does. They were adaptable hunters, too, taking down everything from gazelle to rhinos in that Ice Age landscape.
Yeah.
But culturally, they seem quite advanced.
And were Neanderthals around at the same time in the Levant? Could they have met?
Definitely. Neanderthal sites like Taboon Cave are nearby, and the dates overlap.
Huh.
For tens of thousands of years, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals seem to have occupied the Levant, sometimes maybe even alternating use of the same caves. It raises huge possibilities for interaction, cultural exchange, and, as we'll see, genetic exchange.
But again, these school and Kafsa populations, like Miss Lee before them, they also seem to be a dead end, genetically speaking.
That's the current understanding, yes. They don't appear to be the direct ancestors of people living outside Africa today. Like Apidima, like Mislia, they represent another early, ultimately unsuccessful push out of Africa. Maybe they retreated during harsher climate periods. Maybe they were replaced by Neanderthals who later reoccupied some of these caves. It was an ebb and flow.
Okay, so we've got these early attempts in Europe and the Levant, but the story doesn't stop there. They pushed east, too, into Arabia.
Yeah, and this was a big surprise for a long time. The discovery at Al-Wusta in Saudi Arabia was huge. They found a single tiny finger bone.
Just one bone.
One finger bone, 3.2 centimeters long, but unmistakably Homo sapiens. And the dating puts it at around 85,000 years old.
85,000 years ago in Arabia. But wasn't Arabia mostly desert then?
Not always. That's the key. Alongside the finger bone, they found hundreds of animal fossils, including hippos.
Hippos in Saudi Arabia.
Yep. And stone tools, very similar to ones found in Northeast Africa from the same period.
Yeah.
It tells us that 85,000 years ago, Arabia was much wetter, greener. Think lakes, rivers, grasslands, green Arabia.
Like an extension of Africa.
Exactly. These green corridors opened up periodically due to climate shifts, allowing animals and humans to move out of Africa and across the peninsula. The Al-Wusta find supports this idea of multiple waves leaving Africa whenever the environment allowed.
So they followed the green path and maybe got stranded when it turned back to desert?
That's a strong possibility.
Yeah.
These might have been nomadic groups that became isolated. And there's other evidence, too, tools found in Oman and the UAE dated even earlier, around 100,000 years ago, suggesting sapiens might have been in Arabia even before Al-Wusta.
Okay, so the timeline keeps stretching. Arabia, 85,000, maybe 100,000 years ago. But
Yeah.
then East Asia, China, that seemed like the last place modern humans reached, according to the old model.
That was the consensus, yeah. But finds in China have really thrown a wrench in that. Pion Cave in southern China.
What did they find at Fian?
Teeth. 47 human teeth. And crucially, they look completely modern. Small, gracile, no primitive features. And the dating between 80,000 and 120,000 years ago.
Whoa, 120,000 years ago. Modern human teeth in China.
Yep. There's a solid stalagmite layer capping the deposit that dates to 80,000 years, so the teeth underneath have to be older. It blows the old timeline for East Asia out of the water.
And wasn't there another site, Zirindong?
Right, Zirindong Cave, also southern China. A jawbone, also looking pretty modern, dated to over 100,000 years old. There was some debate initially, but the evidence is mounting that Homo sapiens reached East Asia far, far earlier than we thought.
So maybe a southern route along the coast through South Asia.
That seems the most likely path for these early expansions into East Asia. And notice the pattern. Greece Levant around 200K, Arabia maybe 185K, East Asia 120, 80K. It's like a slow eastward ripple happening much earlier than the main event.
Okay, so multiple waves, spreading far and wide, but mostly not lasting. So what's their legacy? Did they just disappear?
Well, directly, yes. It seems most of these early groups didn't leave descendants today. But indirectly, their genes might still be with us. It's fascinating.
How? Through interbreeding.
Exactly. We know Neanderthals interbred with some modern humans quite early, maybe around 100,000 years ago. There's a Neanderthal fossil from Siberia that actually has detectable Homo sapiens DNA from one of these early groups.
So our genes got into Neanderthals back then.
Yes. And then later, when the main out-of-Africa wave met Neanderthals and Denisovans, they interbred again. So some of those ancient sapiens genes, which had been passed to Neanderthals, could have indirectly cycled back into the main sapiens lineage that populated the rest of the world.
Wow, like a genetic echo passed through another species, a gene exchange loop.
Kinda, yeah. It makes the human family tree incredibly tangled, and it might explain shared technologies too, like that Levallois technique showing up in both groups around the same time. Maybe they were learning from each other.
And what about Neanderthal DNA in modern Africans? That seems weird if Neanderthals didn't live in Africa.
That's another puzzle. One idea is that some early sapiens left Africa, mixed with Neanderthals in the Levant or Arabia, and then some of their descendants migrated back into Africa, carrying those Neanderthal genes with them.
Back migration?
It's possible. Or maybe some populations from the main out-of-Africa wave, already carrying Neanderthal DNA, moved back later. It just shows how much movement and mixing was likely going on.
It really blurs the lines between these groups. Which brings us to Skull One. This kid might be actual proof of that mixing.
The School One child.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is potentially huge. It's a very young child skeleton, maybe 140,000 years old,
Yeah.
from Skull Cave. For years, it puzzled people because they had this weird mix of features.
A mix, like some modern, some Neanderthal.
Exactly. Recent high-res scans and analysis suggest just that. The skull shape, parts of the inner ear look very Homo sapiens, but the jawbone, very robust, very Neanderthal-like. Other features at the base of the skull also lean Neanderthal.
So, a hybrid. A direct first-generation hybrid.
It's a very strong possibility being discussed now, that this child literally had one sapiens parent and one Neanderthal parent, or perhaps a parent from a closely related archaic group like Nesharamla.
Nisharamla. Who were they?
Another recent discovery from near School. These are archaic human fossils, 140, 120,000 years old, also with a strange mix of Neanderthal and older features. And they were using the same kinds of Mousterian tools as the early sapiens nearby.
So the Levant really was a melting pot. Different groups living side by side, using similar tools.
And apparently sometimes interbreeding. School One could be the biological evidence of that melting pot in action. It really challenges neat species boundaries.
And Neanderthals themselves were more widespread and maybe more adaptable than we used to think, even using our tools sometimes.
Seems so. Finding a Neanderthal tooth way down south in Chukba Cave in the Judean mountains extended their known range. And finding it with Nubian-style tools, which we used to think were exclusively Homo sapiens tech.
Means maybe they shared tool ideas, or developed similar ones independently.
Right. It just adds layers of complexity. No simple us versus them, more like a constantly interacting network.
Okay, underlying all this movement, this interaction is climate, right? The driver.
Absolutely fundamental. The Earth went through these massive cycles, warm, wet interglacials like now, and long, cold, dry glacial periods, the ice ages. These cycles totally reshaped the world.
Opening and closing those green corridors we talked about.
Exactly. During warm, wet periods, especially when sea levels were lower because water was locked up in ice sheets, pathways opened up across places like the Sahara, Arabia, the Levant, even the Aegean Sea Basin. That's when hominins could expand.
And when it got cold and dry again.
Those corridors slammed shut. Deserts expanded, forests shrank, populations might retreat back to refuges like Africa or get cut off and isolated, maybe eventually dying out, like those early European or Levantine groups, perhaps.
Was there a particularly good time for expansion way back?
One key period was marine isotope stage 11, MIS 11. That was a long, stable, warm interglacial around 424,000 to 374,000 years ago, a real golden age for movement. The Aegean, for instance, would have been largely dry land connecting Turkey and Greece.
Which might explain some really weird fossils from that time, like the Petrolona cranium.
Ah, Petrolona, yes. Found in a cave in northern Greece, dated to around 375,000 years ago, right at the end of MIS 11. It's one of the most puzzling hominin fossils ever found.
Why? What's so weird about it?
It's this bizarre mix. It's got a massive face, huge brow ridge, reminiscent of Homo erectus or Heidelbergensis, but the brain case is large, like later humans. And the brow ridge itself is weird. It's really hollowed out, filled with huge air sinuses, not typical for sapiens or classic Neanderthals.
Well, what is it?
Nobody agrees. It's been called Erectus, Heidelbergensis, Archaic Sapiens, an early Neanderthal ancestor. It just doesn't fit neatly anywhere. Maybe it's a distinct regional lineage that evolved specific features.
A European dead end from that earlier period.
Could be. And importantly, the cave wasn't just where the skull ended up. They found traces of fire, tools, lots of animal bones. These hominins lived there, hunted, used tools for a long time. They were successful in that environment.
So if you put Petrolona, this robust, weird skull from 375,000 years ago, next to Apidima 1, the gracile, modern-looking skull from 210,000 years ago, both found in Greece, what does that tell us?
It tells us Southeastern Europe wasn't a simple evolutionary story. It was a crossroads. You had different kinds of humans coming in at different times, maybe overlapping, maybe replacing each other. Petrolona might represent one lineage, maybe related to Neanderthals, while Apidima 1 represents a totally different sapiens lineage arriving much later.
The braided stream again, tangled lineages, ghost populations.
Exactly. Petrolona might be one of the streams that flowed for a while and then dried up, or maybe got absorbed into another population. It shows evolution isn't a ladder, it's messy.
Okay, so after all these earlier attempts, these pioneers, these braided streams, we finally get to the main event, the big out-of-Africa wave around 60,000 to 50,000 years ago.
This is the one. Yeah. Genetically, almost all non-Africans today trace their ancestry back to this migration. It was incredibly successful. They spread rapidly along the Asian coasts, reached Australia amazingly early, by 50,000 years ago.
Which implies boats, right?
Heavy boats or rafts. Then into Europe by 45,000 years ago, eventually replacing the Neanderthals. This wave just kept going.
What was different this time? Why did this one succeed so spectacularly where the others apparently didn't long term? Was it technology?
That's a strong hypothesis. This later wave brought what we call Upper Paleolithic technology. Think long, sophisticated blades, tools made from bone and antler, maybe spear throwers, possibly even bows and arrows.
More advanced than the Middle Paleolithic stuff the earlier groups in Neanderthals mostly used.
Generally, yes. More efficient, maybe better for hunting at a distance. Having ranged weapons could have given them a critical edge against prey, maybe against other hominins too. It's speculative, but it's a plausible factor in their success.
So those earlier waves, we shouldn't see them as failures.
No, I think that's the wrong way to look at it. They weren't failures, they were foundations. They were behaviorally modern people. They buried their dead, made art, used complex tools, explored vast new territories. They pushed the boundaries.
They showed it could be done.
Exactly. They were the first to really test the waters, to imagine what was over the horizon, and their legacy isn't totally gone, remember?
Right. Because of that genetic mixing, their genes snuck back into our lineage indirectly.
Precisely. Through interbreeding with Neanderthals and Denisovans, a tiny fragment of their genetic material made it back into the main human gene pool. So in a way, those ancient pioneers are still part of our story, woven into our DNA.
So wrapping this up, we started with a simple line out of Africa. Now we have this incredibly complex mosaic, multiple waves starting way earlier, reaching further than we thought.
Yeah, a migration mosaic. With early symbolic behavior, lots of interbreeding between different groups, and climate acting as this constant push and pull factor. It's just richer.
Yeah.
More complicated.
And it means our own origins aren't this single clean event. We're the product of all these interwoven strands, these journeys, these interactions over hundreds of thousands of years.
We carry echoes of Neanderthals, Denisovans, and maybe even these earlier ghost sapiens populations within us. Our roots are incredibly deep and tangled.
So the provocative thought to leave you with is this. We are the result of a long, messy, interconnected history, not just one successful lineage. What does knowing about this deeper, more complex, shared heritage full of explorations, adaptations, interactions, and even dead ends mean for how we see ourselves as a species today?
It's a reminder that the past isn't really past. It's still here in our genes and our shared capacity for exploration and adaptation. It's a much more intricate and, I think, humbling story of becoming human.